Um, Gentlemen and ladies, my name is Akor Ondale, and my presentation is on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and energy security in Nigeria. The slide, please. Okay, thank you. The next slide. That's my background there. The next slide, please. By way of introduction, regional economic integration has become a dominant feature under the global economic order, with the EU and NAFTA standing as models. There are defined objectives associated with regional trade, which includes cross-border trade, common customs, trade liberalization, and restrictions of tariff and non-tariff, removal of non-tariff and non-tariff restrictions with respect to international trade. The African continent is not an exception to this global phenomenon, with the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which are hereinafter referred to as the AfCFTA. The AfCFTA is intended to expand intra-African trade through a harmonized process of trade liberalization and competitiveness, with great prospect of optimum exploitation of trade opportunities, economies of scale, efficiency in energy production, continental market access, and of course, the maximum exploration of allocation within the African continent. Next slide, please. With an estimated population of over 1.2 billion people, an active workforce, and a projected GDP of over 3.4 trillion US dollars, the African Free Trade Agreement is projected to be the single largest market in the world after the establishment of the World Trade Organization. It impacts on virtually every aspect of life, including aviation, education, manufacturing, transport, ICT, and tourism. However, the core motivating factor relevant for actualizing the mandate of the AfCFTA is concerns on the need for energy security. Energy security has been defined as the availability of energy which is affordable and which is accessible to all persons. Statement of the problem. Despite human abundant energy resources, Africa is the haven of energy poverty globally. Africa has a per capita energy consumption of 480 kilowatts, as against 13,000 kilowatts in the United States and 6,500 kilowatts per capita energy consumption in Europe. This according to the African Energy Outlook of 2019. About 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity, and about 900 Africans cannot afford clean cooking energy. In the Nigerian context, about 80 million Nigerians, representing 43% of the population, only 85 million Nigerians, representing 43% of the population, have access to the national grid. This is according to 2020 World Bank report of doing business in Nigeria. Nigeria ranks 171 out of 119 countries in the electricity ranking. And this causes Nigeria an annual economic loss of about 26.2 billion US dollars, which is estimated to be about 10.1 trillion naira, according to a World Press release in February 2021. Next slide, please. Successive Nigerian governments have tried to resolve the energy problem to no avail. Fundamentally, the energy problem in Nigeria is rooted in three factors, or major factors, which include poor policy implementation, weak institutional base, infrastructure deficits, and absence of competition in the energy sector. It is against this background that one begins to consider the role of a regional body in resolving the energy impasse in Nigeria. We are focused on the EU. EU has a very robust energy policy that strengthens energy security within the Union through providing a framework for intermarket connection, solidarity, and cooperation with a view to providing energy security within the EU community. This has been sustained over time. And against the backdrop of the policy failure in Nigeria, it is significant to leverage on the platform of trade liberalization as provided under the AfCFTA as a basis to providing energy or resolving the energy problem in Nigeria. Preceded by some regional partnership in the energy sector before in Africa, like the South African Power Pool, the West African Power Pool, and the West African Gas Pipeline. It is an indication that African states or the African continent can also collaborate and partner with respect to providing a framework for resolving energy problem in Nigeria through economic cooperation and trade policy harmonization between key institutional and regulatory bodies at both the regional and the national levels. This collaborative framework will be in the areas of finances, technology transfer, capacity building, and promotion of intra-African energy trade, leading to foreign direct investment and energy diversification in the continent. Achievable through a market liberalization framework under the AfCFTA with chances of promoting energy in contrasting states like Nigeria. Next slide, please. Research questions. The research has some questions to offer. How has the Nigerian energy policy impacted on the energy security in Nigeria? And what is the legal framework on trade liberalization under the African Free Trade Agreement, and how can it impact on the Nigerian energy policy? In what ways can the AfCFTA promote energy security in Nigeria? And what are the constraints for achieving energy security under the African Free Trade Agreement? Next slide, please. We have the research objectives as a follow-up to research questions. Next slide, please. Justification of the study. Energy is pivotal to the socio-economic and political development of the Nigerian state, with implications for national development and regional security. Energy trade governance transcends exclusive control of states and has gone to a matter of that concerns both region and international concern. The role of regional blocs like the EU in promoting regional security has become significant. It's against the backdrop of failed energy policies in Nigeria. A liberalized regional African market becomes imperative for providing a panacea to the energy trajectory in Nigeria by providing a regime that impacts on national laws and promoting regional cooperation within the continent. The implication of attaining energy transition and security under a liberalized market economy underscores this study. Next slide, please. Theoretical framework. The study relies on the theory of classical liberalism. The theory of classical liberalism provides for a free market economy. It also encompasses regional incorporation, but fundamentally, it also encourages international trade and cooperation among countries with minimum interference from government. Next slide, please. Methodology. The research employed the qualitative and legal analysis methodology based on the nature of the research work. Next slide, please. The justification of the methodology is based on the context of the overall aim of the study. Next slide, please. Summary of key findings. The research finds that preceded by state monopoly, Nigerian energy policy is based on the liberalization of the sector as provided in two major extant legal regime or instruments, that is the Electricity Sector Power Reforms Act of 2005 and the Petroleum Industry Act of 2001, as well as renewable energy policies from 2003 to 2015. The liberalization policy is aimed at effective energy governance to achieve energy efficiency, economies of scale, competition, and optimal investment in the sector. However, the liberalization of the Nigerian sector has not produced the expected outcome. As of January 2022, only 4,224.9 megawatts of electricity was supplied in Nigeria. This is according to the Guardian newspaper of January 22 to 2020. Sorry, that's a mistake, 2022. Between 2013 and 2020, the national grid has collapsed in no less than 126 times in Nigeria. This is according to the Guardian newspaper of January 23, 2022. Nigeria cannot afford to meet the electricity needs of the country. This is an open news which is within the public domain. And in the petroleum sector, Nigeria cannot meet her production quota as recommended by OPEC presently, irrespective of global developments that would have been of benefit to Nigeria. Nigeria cannot even meet her production quota as recommended by OPEC. The factors that attribute to this include infrastructural deficit, technical, financial, and operational challenges, market disruptions, contractual challenges, poor policy framework, and absence of a robust and competitive private sector. Next slide, please. The AFA, the study also finds that African Free Trade Agreement can promote energy security in Nigeria through policy harmonization, removal of trade barriers, and promotion of regional cooperation with contracting states like Nigeria. The impact of such a collaborative and continental economic framework include the following: a robust and competitive energy market of over 1.2 billion people that will attract huge investment, energy investment, and foreign direct investment within the African market. Establishing a framework that will ensure technology transfer, knowledge sharing, and capacity building on an African-oriented technology. Diversification of energy sources in a manner convenient and easily adaptable within the continent, and ultimately, the attainment of energy security in states like Nigeria, which will lead to high productivity, regional value chain, self-sufficiency, and overall objective of achieving accelerated economic development within Nigeria and the African continent generally. The next slide, please. Energy challenge remains the bane of development in Nigeria and, of course, in Africa. The imperatives of leveraging on the AFCFTA as a vehicle for navigating the Nigerian state out of the energy poverty cannot be emphasized and is highly recommended by the study. Against the backdrop of the significant role played by regional blocs like the EU in securing regional energy security, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement provides a veritable platform for resolving the energy impasse within the continent that seems to have defied all local solutions by successive governments in Nigeria. Barring all constraints like insecurity, neo-colonial affiliations, respect for regional obligation by state parties, and the establishment of a regional and national dispute resolution mechanisms like arbitration, AfCFTA provides a veritable instrument for changing the energy trajectory in Africa and indeed Nigeria. The attainment of energy security is undoubtedly a precursor to the implementation of the overriding objectives of the African Free Trade Agreement as the single largest market with a population of 1.2 billion naira and a GDP of 3.4 trillion US dollars that represents it as the single largest market in the world. And looking at the potentials within this market, if energy is being secured and overriding objectives of the African Free Trade regime are being attained, basically it will be a platform for ushering the African continent into our economic Eldorado. Gentlemen, thank you very much for listening.